Well, good morning, everybody. John McEwen here with the New Jersey Theater Alliance and Cultural Access Network, and so happy to have you all with us for today's Access Thursday Roundtable. This is a new topic, contracting sign interpreters, audio describers, and open captioners. And so we're really looking forward to this discussion. I'd like to give you a visual description of myself. I am a white male in my early 60s, brown and gray hair parted on the side. I have a mustache and goatee. I'm wearing glasses with clear eye frames and bright blue leg frames. I'm wearing a white button-down shirt with navy and red buttons, and I have a blurred background, and I'm coming to you today from my home in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And I'm going to say a good morning to Kat Lilly.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kat Lilly. I'm the Access Coordinator with the New Jersey Theater Alliance. I'm a white female in my early 40s. Today, I've got my hair pulled up in a bun with a pink and orange scrunchie, and I'm wearing a pink and black three-quarter length sleeve sweater. And I'm coming to you from Medford, New Jersey, the land of the Lenni Lenape.
And Kat, do you want to share, just give some people some tips with regards to their questions?
Oh, yes. So sorry. I'm trying to resolve tech issues with someone on email right now. So, when everyone is asking questions, I will be monitoring the chat. If you want to put your questions into the chat, that is great. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, that is also perfectly fine. When I see your question in the chat, I'll just give it like a little thumbs up reaction to let you know that I've seen it, and we will get to it as soon as possible. Sometimes I do go a little out of order with questions, just depending on what we're kind of talking about, but we will get to your question, I promise. If you could please refrain from private messaging me unless you absolutely have to, that would be fantastic.
Great. And good morning, Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Dandio. I am a program officer and also the access coordinator at the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. I use she, her pronouns to provide a visual description of myself. I am a white woman in my late 40s. I have kind of below shoulder length brown hair. It's in a layered cut. Today I'm wearing a dark green top with has bright blue and black flowers and elbow length sleeves. I'm also wearing tortoiseshell framed glasses, and I have a blurred background behind me. And I am coming to you from our offices here in Trenton. Um, as you all know, access is a priority at the council, and we're really pleased to partner with the Cultural Access Network to provide these peer accessibility learning sessions for the New Jersey's arts field. I so look forward to today's session.
Great. And we're so happy, one, to have all of you with us and also to have wonderful colleagues with us to jumpstart and lead us in our conversation. As you know, these are peer-to-peer conversations, so we definitely want to hear from all of you. As Kat said, drop those messages into the chat and we'll get to them. So I'd like to have our panel introduce themselves. So I'm going to say a good morning to Beth. Good morning, Beth.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Beth Prevor, pronoun she, her. I am a mature white woman with short gray hair wearing a kind of cranberry colored sweater with a blurred background. Do you want me to introduce my organization
Yeah, if
now?
you could talk a
Oh,
little
sure.
bit. Mhm.
Sure. I am the executive director of Hands-On Sign Interpretive Performances, just hands-on. Um, and we've been around for 40 plus years. We are based in, and I'm based actually in New York City, across the Hudson. I kind of talk about us that we are a full service art service organization that provides sign language interpreting services mostly for theaters in New York City. That enough for now?
That's great. Thanks,
Okay.
Beth. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Jack Tomey, pronouns he, him, his. I am the Associate Director of Audience Experience at Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn, New Jersey. I'm a slender white man in my late 20s with light beige skin and messy light brown hair stylishly coiffed across my head. I'm sitting in front of a blur background wearing a dark blue shirt and a bright blue Paper Mill Playhouse branded hoodie, which I am showing off on the screen now. You can buy it at papermill.org. And the reason I'm being so descriptive is not only because we were asked, but also because I am a audio describer for Paper Mill and other theaters throughout New Jersey. And as part of my work at Paper Mill, I also coordinate our audio description services for the blind and low vision community for all of our main stage productions, along with other access services.
Great. Thanks, Jack. And good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Schechter. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'll describe myself first. I am a white woman with blondish hair, and for 9 more days, I get to say I'm in my late 50s. Um, and I am wearing a purple sweater. My background is blurred, and I have on reading glasses. And I think that's it. I'm coming to you from my home office in Seabright, New Jersey, which is just around the block from John,
Hmm.
down at the freezing cold Jersey Shore. So I own Total Caption, which is a CART captioning agency. CART stands for Communication Access Real-Time Translation. And CART and captioning are inherently different things, but they've become interchangeable. So everybody talks about captioning. It's really mostly CART, and we do on-site and remote captioning, and I can go into all of those details later. I just wanted to let you know what we do. We provide human captioning services, and that's important to distinguish between the auto-generated, voice-generated, what we call in the industry craptions. So,
Hmm.
and we can certainly talk more about that later also, but just the fact that it's a human-driven service. Um, that's kind of it in a little nutshell.
Great. Thanks, Lauren.
Sure.
So over the years, we've gotten a lots of, one of the reasons that we selected this topic for conversation is Kat and I often get calls from organizations just with lots of questions about what to think about in terms of contracting service and talent for these particular accommodations. And what we've noticed is I think a lot of organizations, there's a lot that they need to give some thought to even before they start reaching out to a sign interpreter, an audio describer, a sign in uh, um, a sign interpreter, etc. So I wanted to ask our panel to just talk a little bit about what should our arts organizations, even before they start to think about reaching out for talent for these services. What do they need to give some thought to before they actually begin to explore the captioning, interpretation, and audio description services? So I think I'm going to start with Jack, just because as um, a manager of the access services at the theater, what are before you even begin to think about contracting any talent at the theater, what are some of the steps that you take before you actually reach out? And what would be helpful for organizations, do you think, who maybe never offered a description service before? What should they be giving some thought to if this is sort of their first time thinking about contracting talent?
Thank you, John. This is Jack. Um, the biggest thing you want to start with, I think, is organizational buy-in, just at least from your immediate team and folks that you know you're going to be working with, but also from executive leadership, and definitely as you progress through this work, getting buy-in from your board of directors or governing body, whatever that looks like. Um, because it's very easy if somebody comes to you and says, I'm deaf and I need captions, or I'm blind, I want audio description, and you can like quick reach out and we'll talk about the ways you can find these providers. But It's very easy to just like do it once and you did it, and maybe the service was good, maybe it wasn't so great, but you know, you checked the box that you know, you met your ADA requirement. Um, but it can be a lot more robust. It can be a lot more community based. It can be a lot more um, worthwhile if you're actually trying to build a substantial program and make it part of your mission, make it part of your programming inherently. So it's not just something that you glom on to existing services that you say, okay, if and when this happens, but it's something that you're building as part of your regular programming. So you know, talking to whoever manages production scheduling, talk with your artistic departments, or, you know, if you're like a gallery or a museum, working with, you know, who's curating those projects or those programs so that you're building access services into the nature of what you're offering, not just as an aside. And then obviously with organizational buy-in comes funding. It's easier to have a conversation around budgeting for these services if everyone's invested in making sure that we offer the services. It's a lot of hand-holding sometimes because people, you know, think they know what access means and they don't, or they understand what it is, but they don't really care about caring about it. So sometimes you have to kind of take on that responsibility and put that on your shoulder of saying, no, I'm going to be annoying and I'm going to pester people to care about this because it'll make your job easier if you're the one coordinating it or scheduling it, that you don't have to worry about convincing leadership. You just have to worry about finding the service providers. So I would say the biggest thing to start with is organizational buy-in.
I love that. Great, great point. Because an organizational buy-in really not just from your colleagues, you know, your staff colleagues, but also from your board, don't you think, Jack?
100%, yes. And in most cases, it's going to start top down, right? You can
Hmm.
plant the seeds within your team and with your colleagues, but the faster you get your governing body to support what it is that you're doing, the easier it's going to be to just think about it intrinsically rather than always having to add it as an agenda item, make sure that people remember to talk about it. There's people that already care about it, then that saves you the legwork of having to be that reminder for folks. And then you just get to have the fun of doing the service and scheduling it and the actionable task of offering the service.
Hmm. And Beth, we do get a lot of phone calls from organizations that just immediately they just want to offer a sign interpreted event. Uh, and sometimes, often we don't feel that they've done some homework or really thought it through. So if an organization is thinking about having one of their performances or perhaps a lecture sign interpreted, again, what are some of the things that they really need to give thought to before they even think about reaching out to a sign interpreter?
Thanks, John. Sure, this is Beth. I mean, I think, you know, everything that Jack said is absolutely right, but I think too that um, one of the reasons why I think that I talk about us as being full service is that we're very connected to the deaf community, and that becomes like a major part of doing a sign interpreted performance. It's not just having an interpreter. If you don't have an audience for the interpreting services, then there's no point to it. And that's where I think sometimes we talk so much about the services and not enough about the audience that are taking advantage of the services. So especially when we're talking about interpreters, interpreters are like a rare resource. I mean, there's not enough interpreters to go around for everybody. And so to pull an interpreter out of their kind of normal needs for a place that they're not really needed is just something that has to be considered in the process, which is why, especially for, a theater or any organization that's starting to think about and providing interpreters, you have to think about what you're providing it for, like the area. I mean, Jack at Paper Mill, now they're in a position where, every one of their shows is audio described, interpreted, and captioned. Start small. I mean, what you need to do is be able to build an audience to get that connection with the deaf community, and that takes time. So that would be one of the first things that I would say to anybody who's interested in starting to provide. services is to reach out. And again, I always say like reach out to the community, like there's somebody to reach out to, like there's a phone number you can call, and that's the deaf community. It's not that easy. And so it's hard to kind of build up like your relationship to the community. So I say that, and I don't say that lightly because it's not easy to get involved, which is why I think I say start small. Like, don't do everything. Pick a show that you think would be of interest to the community. Pick a show that might have deaf people in it. Pick a show that might have a special topic that would be of interest. And then you go out and you try to reach out to the community to get them involved. So that's in terms of the full service, it's both ends. You can't, there's no point to have an interpretive performance without a deaf audience. So, and you got to work on both ends of getting those areas covered.
So I'm hearing you say, Beth, that, giving yourself like a long runway, right? Because so
Mhm.
often some folks will call us and they'll say, we'd like to offer something sign interpreted. And they're like, the event is either, next month, it's very close. And I think you make a good point. And they don't really know if they're going to get a deaf audience because they haven't done any target marketing or outreach, right?
Yeah, and also this is Beth again, and also, it's so much harder if you start um with a problem, if you start and it's not good, or you don't have a qualified interpreter, or you don't do the outreach, it's so much harder to get back in the good graces of a community after you start something that wasn't really stellar. So that's why I think it is a good point to say start slow. Start with something that you can have enough time to do it, that the interpreters can have enough time to do their work, that you have enough time to reach out to the community and then do it. And then, once you kind of start with that kind of community building, you're so much in a better place to kind of follow up. And then you also get like, talking about buy-in, you get buy-in from the community. It would be so much better if the community then came to you and said, "Oh, we saw that one show or that one lecture. That was great. We want more." And then you get that buy-in from the community, and that sets you up for success in the future because you have that kind of community relationship.
So they actually turn into your advocates, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Lauren, just in terms of captioning, and also we do get a lot of organizations reach out and they just say, oh, if we just provide captioning, we've taken care of all individuals. We take care of the deaf community, we take care of the hearing loss community, and we try to educate folks of the difference. So if you want to talk a little bit about captioning, but also you and Beth can also tag team a little bit. I think it's important for folks to really understand that these are two different services for different constituents. And I think there's still sometimes that does need clarity in our field. So, but Lauren, why don't you start a little bit about the captioning, and then I'd love you and Beth to just comment on, really the differences of the services.
Right. So with captioning, if just to start at the very beginning, in case anybody's not familiar with it, it's speech to text for people with hearing loss. So we are hearing everything and translating it into a shorthand language that we're using to write on our shorthand writers, which is the same thing that a court reporter uses. And type it out in shorthand, it comes back up on our computer in English, all in real time, and it's displayed. Open captioning is where it's displayed on a screen and nobody has the opportunity to turn it off or not look at it. You have to see it. Closed captioning is like when you're watching TV and you can push a button, or even on Zoom, you can close it if you don't want to see it. That's closed captioning. People just say closed captioning for everything, but there is a difference. So with open captions, it's a little more universal than using an ASL interpreter. That is specifically for people who communicate in ASL. And we find that not only the community of people with hearing loss benefits from reading captions, but we find that a lot of non-native English speakers really benefit from it. People with learning disabilities who are visual, you process things better visually, benefit from it. So we always get people who come up to us afterwards saying, "Wow, I had no idea I was missing so much," or that was great. And they're not necessarily the people who asked for it. So captioning is a little more universal and can benefit a much wider crowd. People who are deaf and use ASL also, I find I mean, we work a lot in tandem with ASL interpreters. Beth, we've worked together quite a bit. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a difference. And Beth, you didn't say it, but interpreters work both ways with the deaf community because if you've got your deaf person, I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about a play, but if you're doing some kind of a lecture and people are interactive talking, if that deaf participant needs to ask a question or comment or something, they'll sign and the interpreter will voice for them. So they're kind of working in two directions.
Hmm.
I don't want to steal your thunder and describe what you're doing, but that's another service or advantage to ASL interpreters.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
Beth.
yeah. I mean, the one thing that I do want to add about interpreting, I mean, I keep talking about it as like with the deaf community. I will say what I've kind of seen over the years of when we do a show, the show that we interpret is a community event. It's not kind of like an individual person going to the theater. I mean, it really is a community event. We usually have a block of tickets. That's what, we strive for at the very beginning is we're doing Hell's Kitchen tonight. We have a block of tickets. We had 60 tickets. The reason why I say that we do is full service because one of the things that we do is that we sell the tickets to the deaf community. So we have a block of tickets. We kind of do the placement of making sure that deaf people have the prime seats locations to be able to see the interpreters. We put the hearing people off kind of more on the side people. On the side seats, we make sure that deaf people have the best location. But the shows that we interpret are community events. Everybody is kissing, hugging, seeing their friends. It's a different experience than when I go to the theater with my, partner, my friend, whatever, just going to the theater, which is valid and great and a great way to see it. An interpretive performance ends up being a community event. And so I'm not quite sure how, it just is. It just really, that's what it's become over the years. There are a couple of theaters that I know that will provide interpreters on request for, an individual or a family group that's going to see a show. We don't do that. We really do an event that has a block of tickets. Tonight we have like 65 people coming, and it's a community event. So that's why when I talk about like the deaf community, I really am talking about that the event or what you're providing becomes an event for a larger group of deaf people. I mean, there are deaf people that use sign language, but also go to caption performances. It really is a choice that people make that people decide what they want. They're more English based and they want to see the written word and they want to know exactly what the language is of the play rather than interpretation of it. So it's kind of another service. It doesn't replace, you can't replace, an ASL user and say, well, we'll provide captioning and that replaces American Sign Language. It's just a different service for different people.
Hmm. Well, I think you make a good point of just really understanding the individuals you're serving, right? And in this case, you're talking about the deaf community is like you've shared with us. It's a community. So when you're thinking about audience development, you have to understand the kind of the nuances of the various constituencies that you're looking to serve, right?
This is Beth again. Sorry, and tell me if I'm talking too much. But
Yeah, no
but
worries.
again, it's, for I think for all three of us, it's also that relationship that we have with the community. I mean, I get phone calls, I get people emailing me with questions. How can I do this? Do you still have tickets available? It's that kind of contact. And like one of the reasons that we sell the tickets is because we're kind of known in the community. And so people feel comfortable about, they contact me about a show that we're doing or even a show that somebody else is doing, but I might have more information. So it's getting the information out. And I think again that Jack is there or that Lauren's there, somebody can contact us for information or questions. I think is just like another offering of the community relationships that you're building with people, that you are the contact, that they're not calling telecharge or they're not calling some kind of random place that says, I don't really know, or yes, it is, and they're not really quite sure. That we're kind of known entities in the community and people will feel confident and comfortable like asking the question and making sure things are being taken care of.
Great.
We do have some questions in the chat, John.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one, we have three questions. The first one's from Kimberly. It says, do you have specific organizations to reach out to in an effort to find the people in the area that would be interested in this?
So that would be for all the services. So maybe that's maybe to start with Jack, just in terms of maybe just sharing with folks, just in terms of let's stay on the pathway of marketing and getting the word out that Beth has so rightly shared with us. So, Jack, maybe to talk a little bit about what are the avenues you take to spread the word that of the services that Paper Mill's offering.
Absolutely. So a big part of our marketing efforts, and a big part of our mission at Paper Mill is access for all. So we always put access related services and performances in our marketing materials just as a blanket default. We know that they exist. We want to make sure that they're at minimum they're listed and available as part of our regular programming. So if you're not already calling them out on your website, if you're not already putting them in any brochures or postcards or advertisements that you're putting out there, I definitely recommend it because it not only gets the word out there, but it also helps normalize these services
Mm.
and makes people, recognize that they're available. If it's not a deaf person that's seeing the advertisement, maybe it's a friend of a family member who's deaf and they know about it, and then they can connect people within their circles and then they connect and it snowballs in a good way. The Theater Alliance is a great resource. They have the cultural calendar where we can advertise events and specifically call out what performances or events have access services. I work with Beth every year to send out e-blasts to her constituents. So it's finding those little pockets and just getting the word out in that way. There are plenty of newsletters that I sign Paper Mill up for about local events, but also to promote our own events. And it can sometimes feel a little like mom and pop to do it that way, where you're like, oh, fine, I'll go and I'll sign up on that newsletter, or I'll email this person and they'll send an e-blast or they'll put it in their brochure. But that's actually going to be a lot of where people find out that stuff. We don't yet have as robust a database as I would love to be able to just like click a couple buttons and get a 20-page list of folks that might use ASL and then be able to send them targeted emails on our own. If you have that functionality, if you have that data, that's great too. But we do try to cast as wide a net as possible so that we can catch as much as we can. And then it's just a matter of participating in events themselves. I go to sign interpreted performances. I use audio description when I go see shows just for my own learning, but also just so I understand what the constituents are experiencing, so I have a better understanding of how to talk about it and talk with people about it. I'm chatting with people at events. I'm participating in roundtables like this. So it's just a matter of like inserting yourself into the community so you know what to be looking out for. Because now when I go see a show and I don't see that they have sign interpreting, that's something that clicks in my brain of what could they be doing? How can I get involved? What could we be doing there rather than just completely bypassing it and not thinking a second about it.
Right. Beth, thoughts there? I know hands-on, I know you have your own, you have a specific database of members.
Yeah.
But any thoughts, suggestions for folks if they are offering something, a sign interpreted event, how best to get the word out to the deaf community?
Sure. This is Beth. I mean, I think a lot of what Jack said is, how we kind of share information with each other just to get the word out. Like, Jack said, I send out e-blasts about paper mill. We kind of like talk to each other and, it's not that far. Paper mill uses a lot of interpreters that are from New York City, so that name recognition is great. But we send out an e-blast. I mean, I would truly kind of recommend people, go to paper mill, go to an interpretive performance at paper mill and see who's there. Try to kind of find people that are already taking advantage of like other services that are in the area. I mean, I had a conversation with people at McCarter. McCarter is on Princeton's campus. Princeton now has a deaf studies program. So there are like deaf people that work at Princeton. They have an ASL program there. I said, talk to the people at Princeton, kind of like that McCarter is like right there. So you take advantage of that. So it's kind of, figuring out that those pockets and we have a calendar hands on. So we have a calendar of events online in addition to the shows that we interpret that anybody can like send me the information and we'll put it up on the calendar. So Jersey is, we have a lot of people that live in Jersey that are on our mailing list. So, our mailing list is like 2,000 people. So they get whatever I send out. So, I can kind of, send out information. It's not that difficult for us to do it. And the more we can kind of spread services around, the better for everybody. So definitely the better for the community as well. So it's, and like I said, I think at the beginning, there is no one place to go. Deaf people are individual. They have individual, it's really hard to say go find deaf people. They're not just there. So it's not, but going to events that deaf people attend is kind of one way to find
Hmm.
out where people are. I mean, when we
Yeah.
started, we put like a little address book out at a little theater that when we were first starting, we just asked people to sign up. So, and I will kind of say only because I looked at this in advance. So, Two River Theater is doing a production in collaboration with Deaf West, which is the huge deaf theater in California who did Spring Awakening and Big River. They're doing a production in June. I would tell everybody on this thing to either contact Two River, make sure that you go see the show, see who's going to go to. They're going to have a big deaf audience. It's a Deaf West production in Jersey. So whatever kind of relationship you can kind of set up to kind of figure out who's going to go see that I think would be a great in kind of so it's finding those little pockets of things that you might not be aware of, but people in the community, like I know just because I know that it's going to be there. So it's finding that and finding those little, places that you can know that there's going to be a lot of deaf participation.
And it takes time to build those relationships.
Mhm.
And also, I would also, from experience, when folks come and they're a deaf audience member or somebody who has vision loss is attending an audio description, speak and get to know those individuals, speak to them. They also, as we said earlier, they can be great advocates and helping to spread the word. So it just builds by telling friends, kind of like that shampoo commercial, you tell two friends and they tell two friends. But just to keep in mind that it is all about these relationships, getting out there and understanding that it does take some time. And just to piggyback on what Beth said with regards to Two Rivers performance in June, I have been speaking with Two River to try to put aside a block of tickets so that we as a field can attend a performance. Um, just for the very, that very fact, Beth, that you shared. Just good to be there, speak to people. So I am in the process of speaking to the theater to see what's possible. So stay tuned for some more details there. And Laura, in terms of reaching those who have hearing loss that could benefit from captioning, what are some suggestions to get the word out about that?
A lot of it is kind of like Beth said, it's word of mouth, and there's not really one place to go. We've been in the industry for so long in New Jersey and New York. And actually, you mentioned Two River. They do an open captioned performance for every one of their big performances, and we've been captioning those performances for many years. It started long before COVID. Um,
Mhm.
and we will be doing that one in June. I actually won't be there because I'll be out of the country then, but we do have a captioner who'll be there, sending through those captions. So it's a big thing, and a lot of it is word of mouth. So talk to Two River; they'll recommend us, and we've and John, the Theater Alliance has been great. I get lots of inquiries from theaters and cultural groups in throughout New York, New Jersey that you've passed along our name, which we really greatly appreciate. But it is that word of mouth, and the people with hearing loss who have been using captioning for a long time know about it and know to request it. The newly uh, the people who are entering the community are looking for those things. There's the Hearing Loss Association of America. I've been working with the New York City chapter, which is very involved in theater and all those cultural things in New York for, well, since I've had Total Caption, which is over 20 years now.
Mhm.
And there's a hearing loss association of there are chapters in New Jersey, throughout New Jersey, the different counties. I don't think that the um, deaf and hard of hearing, no, the Division of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, the commission in New Jersey is great. It doesn't have, I think, a great database, but that's another resource to go to in New Jersey. But I think it is kind of word of mouth that different theaters talk to each other and say, we want to do this or we're having this. And like Two River will, you know, give our name, give Beth's name if they're doing an ASL performance.
Mhm. We always say that it's really important for you to develop a relationship with your county office that serves people with disabilities. Most of the counties have one. They're really great resources to spread the word about your organization, your events, what you're offering. So if they're not on your radar and you don't have a relationship with them, I think that would be really a benefit, another avenue for you all to take. So before I go to my next question, Kat, is there another question up in the queue?
Yes. So I apologize. My internet kicked me off. So if I have missed your question, I don't have access to any of the chat from before Tara's message. So if you just want to put your question back in the chat if we have missed it. But Tara has asked if you have a need for a sign language interpreter, where can you go to contract for your event?
Oh, well, that's one of our questions that we talked about discussing is what's the avenue that organizations can take to find the talent, whether it's audio describers, interpreters, of course, we know we're just going to bombard Lauren with tons of emails and, and phone calls, but what are the avenues to take that organizations can take to locate the talent? So maybe Jack, to kind of talk a little bit about, why don't you talk a little bit about audio description and what is the path that you take for audio describers?
Certainly. Well, it's easy for me because I'm an audio describer. But I wouldn't dare hire myself for every show. I would go crazy. So one of the biggest resources has been the Theater Alliance, and we partner with them every year to host an annual training for prospective audio describers in our local industry, which has been great for both training new describers, but also increasing the pool of folks that I know exist. We've talked back and forth periodically about whatever kind of like database or roster that would look like, and it's slowly starting to grow because of this training program. But everybody like knows somebody who also knows somebody. So if you find one audio describer and ask, "Hey, can you work this show?" and they say, "No, I can't," they'll usually 9 times out of 10 they'll be able to recommend someone else, and then that person can recommend someone else, and hopefully you just find the person that has the availability. But the Theater Alliance has been a really, really great resource, and other theaters too. I've reached out to Carter before. I've reached out to Two River and other theaters to just ask, "Hey, who was the person you used last for this service? I know you have the service, so we don't have to keep everything proprietary. It's not a secret that we have a service provider. If we get very protective over, well, if I tell them that I used this person, and that person's going to only want to work at Paper Mill, and they're never going to want to work at my theater again. No one is, at least no one should be doing access work because they want to be protective over it, and they want to find the best gig for them and never work anywhere else. If a theater or an organization needs somebody, chances are somebody's going to step up to be available because it's necessary work that needs doing. So I would definitely, again, the community is always a great resource. I want to be very careful about how I phrase that though, where you shouldn't be looking to community members to find service providers for you. If a blind person asks for an audio describer, don't go back to that person and say, "Oh, well, do you know somebody?" Because that old chestnut is well worn and not the avenue that you want to take. But it can be a conversation if it's a specific individual request, what dates are you coming, where is the last theater that you attended, and that can help branch you into the next resource that you can possibly use. But I highly recommend the Theater Alliance and our network of organizations as well. And Google's always a great friend, so that's helpful too.
Great. And Beth, in terms of sign interpreters, I know we often talk about the limited pool here in New Jersey, but what are some thoughts if folks are looking to have either a lecture or a performance interpreted? What some tips do you have that they should be giving some thought to?
Sure. This is Beth. I guess the major tip is I would try to go through an agency, like an interpreter referral agency. I know Sign Language Resources they're kind of a national presence, but they do New York, New Jersey, local in terms of having a conversation for names. I mean, I think with interpreters, I will say that unfortunately, I don't think that the commission um, puts out the best kind of information for sign language interpreters. They'll give you a list. It's kind of a PDF piece of paper that just lists names. And I don't think that's the best way to find interpreters. I think it is more like community minded, with referrals from people in the community. So it's a little bit different than I think what Jack said, because I do think that people will give you names of people that they've worked with, to start with. So I do think it's a lot of individual contacts. I mean, Paper Mill does really good interpreting services. Try to, find the interpreters that work at Paper Mill, and ask them, because they're looking for, and the kind of the program that the way the program works with Jack and Paper Mill, I think also is like, so Jack, I'm going to talk about your program, but which kind of is like how we work, is that there's somebody there who's kind of in the interpreting field looking for interpreters. So there's somebody who knows the interpreters and knows the skills of the interpreters, looking for other people in their field. And I think that that's a really good way in terms of reaching out and finding people in the community who have experience or have worked. A lot of interpreters in New York work in New Jersey. There are some really good interpreters who do theater interpreting who live out in Jersey. So it is a lot of individual connections and contact. So, as Paper Mill has like a really strong interpreting program, and they have like individuals that kind of reach out to interpreters in the community, I would kind of find their names. And like Jack said, they're not, it's not territorial, and they're freelance interpreters. And so they are looking for other work. And again, that's where I would say go back to McCarter. McCarter has deaf people working there. I'm sure they have interpreters that are working at McCarter that they could give you references of names of interpreters that work there. I'm sure they're good interpreters, it's Princeton University. So I'm assuming that, the quality of the interpreter is pretty high. Same thing with Paper Mill. I mean, I think it is a lot of individual referrals and oh, I know. Oh, Christina. I know Christina lives in Jersey. She's a really good interpreter. I would give you her name. It's that kind of referral for people rather than just seeing in a piece of paper. Even people that have certification from a national organization, you really need that kind of individual knowledge of the people, and who to kind of call, and not coming from paper, but coming from somebody that knows the field.
hmm I think a couple of things just to lift up is from what you and Jack just shared. Just there's a lot of accessible work going on within our cultural community, and I think going out and exploring and introducing yourself and learning what other organizations are doing and the talent that they're using is really important. So your fellow cultural organizations are really great resources right there. Another thing to lift up is what Beth just said. Just because you see, an audio describer or an interpreter on a piece of paper doesn't necessarily mean that they're a quality describer or interpreter. And I think you want to ensure that whatever talent you hire, just like whatever talent you would use for your art form, your performers, your visual artists, you want quality art, right? So you want it, that also needs to be taken into account for the service that you provide. Because if the quality um, is not good, the chances of those individuals coming back and you building any kind of an audience are very slim. So I think it's important to know who the talent is and their reputation before you actually reach out to somebody. So I just wanted to lift that up. Lauren, just in terms of captioners, I know they're going to be reaching out to you, but other, thoughts, just in terms, and I understand, you have a group of captioners that you work with. It's not just yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They're not employees. They're all individual independent contractors. But because we've been in the industry so long, and there really are not a lot of physical the pool of people physically in this area is small. During COVID, we lost a few. They moved away and decided not to come back. So. Um,
Mhm.
like Beth was saying, and Jack, you were also saying, the pool of the captioners is pretty small and um, getting smaller, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, like everybody was saying, it's really kind of word of mouth. It's who you know or who you've worked with in the past and had good experiences with, and because I know so many people in the area, and I am a captioner myself, and so I know who to call, but it's also a huge question of the availability,
Mhm.
and um, I get a lot of requests for not necessarily theater, but for jobs taking place in South Jersey. Captioners just don't exist down there. So it's very, very difficult to put a physical body in a location or in a venue down there. So that's another um, reason to talk about remote captioning, which is something else, but we can save that for another part of the discussion, um, or segue, whatever
Well,
you
why,
want.
why don't you share, since you brought it up, why don't you share? Because that's just, it's an alternative that people are probably not aware of. So if you could
It's
tip
it,
on
it
that.
it's a big alternative. Basically, remote captioning is where we're putting our ears into the room using something like Zoom or some audio connection where we don't have to physically be in the location. And Zoom kind of perfected it during COVID, where everything was virtual. So then when the pandemic ended and things started becoming a little bit more on site, they went hybrid. So there were people who still didn't feel comfortable leaving their home and going to, a place where there were going to be a lot of people. So a lot of things went hybrid, and we kind of perfected how to get around that and get our captions. So basically, I can be sitting here in my home and I can be connected to your theater remote with a remote connection, like Zoom. So I've got a camera facing the stage. I can see what's going on. I've got a client in Florida who puts on performances every year. They send us the script and we send them over the internet the real-time captions, and there's virtually no delay. And they can put that on their screen so that the captions are appearing, but we're not in the room. It's much more cost effective. We've got a much bigger pool I can get somebody from anywhere in the world, really, as long as they've got an internet connection. So we've got a much better chance of getting your event covered, as long as we can do that. And we don't just have to do open captions on a big screen for an audience. I've got a lot of clients who have vision loss as well as hearing loss. They're not blind, but they're maybe legally blind, or they've got visual challenges. So they can't see a screen that's on the other side of the room. I can also take the same captions and stream it right to their own individual device so that they can be looking at their iPad or even a smartphone, anything that's got an internet connection. So I've got several clients who blow up the font to a nice large size so they're able to see it, and they, hold it as close to their face as they need to be able to participate. So it's captioning is so versatile. There's so many options and solutions to making it happen, and remote is just another really wonderful way now to allow a bigger audience to be able to participate.
Great. I know there's a lot of other questions, but I'm sure Kat somewhere, because I don't want to lose time and not get to this question, and that's about the fee. Because all of these services, there is a fee that you need to be aware of. Going back to what Jack said earlier at the top of our discussion, that you want to get that organizational buy-in for policy, for budgeting. So I'd love just to take a few minutes because I see that I think the chat room is blowing up, but I don't want to lose the time on this very important piece of giving people an idea of the fee, if the fee is negotiable. So Jack, maybe starting with you with regards to audio describers, what is your um, can you give folks sort of an idea of an average fee that you pay your describers?
Yes, absolutely. This is Jack. My fee is $5 million.
Oh
But that's
my.
just me. No. We contract our audio describers at a range between 500 to 600 for the service itself, and that includes the live description, the prep work, coming to performances, meeting with me and talking through with the rest of our team, which for clarification, the audio description team for Paper Mill includes one describer that does the live scribing during a performance. We also host a sensory seminar, which is a pre-show also known as a touch tour for a tactile experience, and we share pre-show descriptive notes, and that's a second person who does that job. And then we'll contract either 1 to 2 audio description advisors, which are members of the blind or low vision community, because community input is so important and vital when we're offering services. Nothing about us without us. Um, so that makes up the team. And those folks are paid on that range of 500 to 600 based on the scope of work they're doing. That can vary based on the size of the show. Last month, Paper Mill, we concluded Frozen, Disney's Frozen, which was a large, big spectacle show. Versus right now, we're doing Come From Away, which is 90 minutes with no intermission. So the scale of the work and the ability of folks to do the work is scalable in that way. A big part of what we also incorporate into payment is travel stipends. With the digital age, it's a lot easier for folks to rehearse and practice over Zoom or remotely, depending on what resources you make available. There are just inherently going to be times where the service provider, if they're doing enough preparation, is coming to your venue and interacting with the programming, or where they're watching the show, where they're, you know, looking at the artwork that they're going to be describing, if it's a gallery or something. And travel is annoying nowadays. It's just it's a big part of having to navigate going to work. So if there's concern around like budgeting the actual fee and the service, travel stipends or travel accommodations are really big, um, a big way to kind of ease the blow of not maybe being able to offer a competitive rate, because again, like I said before, anyone that really wants to be doing access work is going to do it because they know that it's necessary and that it's important. But also, we don't want to be inconveniencing the people that are doing this necessary work. So that's what we're working with for audio describers.
hmm And I do just want to make a plug in here that we are going to be offering some audio description training for the visual art community in the spring. So I just want to say stay tuned. And that's going to be, a little bit different than describing for a live piece of theater. But I just wanted to make a plug for that. And also, I'm hearing, Jack, that you can certainly, speak to the describer, let them know what your resources are. I think you're saying, making sure that you're accounting for that travel stipend is really important. But I think it varies maybe a little bit um, depending upon the particular art activity and what's involved. But you could have a conversation with the describer and just come up with a fee that would be comfortable for both the describer and the organization. Is that your experience?
Yes, it's all very negotiable. It's good to, standardize your practice and kind of know what range you can kind of live in comfortably, on a consistent basis so that you're not contracting people at varying rates all the time. Um, but knowing that range that you can kind of set on a yearly basis when you're working on your budgets or when you're talking with your executive leadership, and then using that range as a negotiable factor to when you're actually talking with the service provider. Because sometimes you're working with someone who's fairly novice and is gaining experience, and you
hmm
want to respect that they're learning this trade and this skill, but you also want to keep in mind that there are more seasoned, skilled providers out there that also deserve to be compensated in accordance with their skill level.
Great. And Lauren, just in terms of captioning, what can people expect for a range of fees? I guess again, a lot will depend upon length of time, what's required, but if you could provide some guidance there.
Yeah, it is, nothing is set in stone. It is very negotiable. We, for the most part, bill hourly instead of a set block, like you were saying, Jack. And it could be anywhere from, for on-site, it ranges from $175 an hour to 225, something like that. It really depends on the complexity, where it's located, the day of the week, if it's a weekend or if it's a nighttime kind of thing. It's a little bit more so, and there's travel that goes into that. There's no travel when you're doing it remotely. It's less expensive, and there's also prep time for theater. Most of the time we get scripts, and we can't live caption plays. It's virtually impossible. I mean, imagine Shakespeare or something like that. We just can't do it. So we need to have the script, and then we need to format that script so we can use it in a format that we're able to push it out while it's, as the words are being spoken, the text is appearing on the screen. Um,
Mhm.
so we're physically taking that script and manipulating it and working with it. If we're given a script that's got a lot of stage direction that needs to be pulled out because that's not being pushed through. That all takes a lot of time in advance before the performance to work with that. And so that's all billable time because the captioner is working on your specific job. So that all is built into it. Sometimes we do tell a theater that the rate is a certain amount for the show that'll include the prep time. But for the most part, it is hourly.
And you have done, because we've contracted you, of course, many times for conferences, lectures, those kinds of things. And is the fee slightly different there? I know that we often send you as much information in advance as possible, remarks and so forth. As we get them, we send them to you in advance. But if it wasn't a theater event and it was much more instructional, is there a slight difference in the fee structure?
Not really the hourly rate.
Mhm.
There will be less prep time if there's not going to be any scripts involved. Like a lot of the events that I do with you, like the gala, we get
Right.
lyrics to songs that are being sung, and we do the same thing. We program those in. You very often send a script. It may not be as long, so we're not going to bill you as much in prep time, and we can usually give you an estimate when you send us the material. We can usually kind of guesstimate how much prep time is going to be involved.
Hmm. Great. Good. And Beth, in terms of contracting sign language interpreters, what again, the range and what should people be expecting for the fee for interpreters?
Sure, this is Beth. For theater performance, I would highly recommend not paying interpreters hourly. Generally, interpreters work on an hourly basis for jobs that they do, educational, whatever their regular jobs are. For theater, because so much of their work is prep time, it's a fee for service. It's a flat fee, which includes all their rehearsal time, all their prep time, doing the performances. So all I can kind of give you is what we pay here in New York. I mean, um, it's probably going to sound high, but we've been around for a long time and we work at a lot of different theaters. So what we pay interpreters is 1,200 per interpreter. I will say we always have a deaf director for every interpreted performance that we have, and I will stress that no matter what the size of your theater, the size of your organization, having a deaf person involved is vital and really should be definitely part of the team. Um, we have anywhere from one interpreter to four interpreters. Again, it depends on the show. It depends on the size of the theater. We're actually dealing with um, a theater now where the show really requires four interpreters based on the script and the characters in the show in terms of clarity for a deaf audience seeing it, but the size of the theater won't accommodate four people. So we're kind of in a quandary over there about what to do with that performance. Because of the nature of the size of the theater. So, and then I can only talk about, in terms of our services, which are somewhat negotiable based on what we do, because we handle all the tickets. So generally, when we get hired by a theater, it can run anywhere from 5,000 to $10,000, depending. And again, for us, it depends on the size of the theater. What I'm going to charge a Broadway theater versus what I'm going to charge a smaller off Broadway theater, if we can work on it, is going to, and we vary that based on how much money we'll take in terms of the administration. And I acknowledge that it's the interpreters that are putting in all the work. And so whether it's a big theater or a small theater, the interpreter work doesn't really change that much. And we really want the quality of interpreters because that's going to generate the audience. And so I will generally adjust us as, as the only part of the fee that I can really adjust, and say, well, we'll take less money for the administration, but I really want the interpreters to get their due because they're putting in all the work. So But it's not it's and I'm sure like for individual interpreters, it's negotiable. It's not, when there'll be interpreters that will do it for $500. There'll be interpreters that want more money than that. And again, that's the level of the interpreter and how long they've been doing it and how skilled they are. But I will also say if you get an interpreter that shouldn't be doing this and will just take, less money, that's something to consider. And which again is why I say start small. It's better to do one show really well and get really good, a really good interpreter team and spend money on that and then raise money for the next year's season rather than doing a show that's going to be cheaper and have less skilled interpreters, and it's going to be really hard to get an audience, or they're not going to. It's going to be hard to get an audience that's going to appreciate that interpreting service. So think small, and do it well.
Right. So, Kat, back to you because I know that you've got quite a quite a list there, I'm sure, from
Yes,
folks,
there is a
right?
list of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this one since we're talking about the financial side of things. Gary has asked if there are grants available to assist theaters in providing these services.
There are, so I'll share with you a little bit about some of the pathways that we take. So the New Jersey Fund for the Blind, I'm a board member of that organization. We do provide small grants up to $5,000 to support any programming that's enhancing the quality of life for the blind, low vision community. And they have provided support to the Alliance, as well as several theaters and other arts groups that are offering services to benefit the blind, low vision community. We have also, over the years, received support from healthcare organizations that have seen the need of these services and enhancing the health and quality of life of an individual. So we have had some success in going to some of those more non-traditional arts funders over the years. So those are just some thoughts there. And also, I'll ask Lindsay just to confirm this, but I know that organizations can use some of their GOS grant for supporting some of their access work. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you, John. Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yes, for services such as these, you absolutely can use your general operating support funds, for these like fee for services for access.
And also, we do have equipment at the Theater Alliance that we do loan to everyone. There are two channel devices for enhancing um, the um, the sound, amplifying the sound, but also the second channel is used for audio description. So if you are offering an audio description service but do not have the equipment, you can reach out to Kat with enough notice, and we're happy to loan you the equipment. And we're raising funds right now to expand the number of devices that we can share with the community. So, Jack, I don't know any thoughts there on avenues paper mills taken to support the talent of these services.
Absolutely. Yes, this is Jack. Um, a big part of our services are self-funded through paper mill, but through a lot of philanthropy from our donors and our constituents. So finding again the community buy-in, there are going to be folks that use the services that want them to continue and like love your organization and want the success of the programs to be long lasting. And so with the right kind of hand holding, with the right kind of white glove service, you can actually steward a really strong relationship and partnership with some of your constituents who you may not even know exist. A lot of folks, assume that your high profile donors are only going to come from a gala or a major event or through some kind of networking opportunity. But again, if you're being a steward of your organization at these programs, at these events, if you're going and involving yourself in the community, that's just a way to build that rapport and just talk about your organization in a way that gets individual donors and contributors to care about not only the service but about the organization itself. So a big part of how we provide these services is through the ongoing support from our internal donors.
That's really a great point.
So,
Yes, Beth.
so I'm just gonna like throw you and Lindsay on the spot. Like, so all I can say is that so we hands-on, so we got funding from our kind of city, the Department of Cultural Affairs, which is like New York City, for mentoring. So I'm just kind of throwing that out to you guys that that might be something in terms of funding for theaters that, in terms of expanding the pool of interpreters, we've just found that, having a funding program on our end to be able to mentor, we now try to bring in a new interpreter every show that we do. And we did 60 shows last year, and we try to bring in new interpreters of color. We're trying to do outreach to interpreting communities that don't necessarily aren't part of our pool of interpreters, but we recognize the need to expand our kind of pool of resources. So I'm just kind of throwing that out to you of something to think about in terms of a way to provide support for your members as in terms of funding in order to increase the pool out there that this kind of mentoring and because there's Paper Mill, there's Two River, there are theaters that are actually doing interpreting services, interpreting programs that might be a way to kind of expand something in helping theaters bring in new interpreters. So that's like a
Mhm.
funding thing on your end to
Yeah, we have tried that over, I think, Beth, I think you were even working with us a little bit on that. It is, we're open to trying it again. Just getting the interest of individuals who understand sign language to have an interest in being an interpreter for theater was a bit of a challenge. We tried it. We were getting limited results, but I totally agree with you to keep at it because we do have a mentorship program built into the audio describer training, and we're seeing that pool growing nicely as a result of that. But I agree, the more that we opportunities that we can provide to build the talent pool, the better. So, but I'd love to chat with you about that further to see what we could try again because we have tried that before and it was just getting the qualified interpreters to do the theater interpreter training. That was where we were hitting some roadblocks.
Well, this is Beth. I mean, just to kind of follow up that, I mean, how we're targeting, we're going like to individuals. Like we're finding people that have, somebody says, oh, I know somebody who's an interpreter who might be interested, who's a good interpreter, and then we're contacting them. And so it
Hmm.
really is like not this kind of mass like workshop
Right.
that we're looking at. We're really doing like it individually and bringing people in, and they're kind of just following skilled interpreters on a show. And then we've been able to like use them for other and start them small and use them on smaller shows or shows, kind of kid shows where they have a little bit more support and do it that way. So it really is like a one-on-one kind of
More
thing.
one-on-one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd
But
love to
yeah.
offline talk about that a little bit more. Yeah. All right, Kat, we've got about 10 minutes. So get set, go, right? Because I'm sure you've got still a list going on there.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. Are there any special considerations for tactile exhibits versus performance?
Well, I know that, for example, Grounds for Sculpture. I don't know if we have. I think I saw Sam join us from Grounds for Sculpture. They do offer tactile experiences of the pieces of sculpture there, and then Jack, as you were saying, you offer as part of the audio description offering. There is a sensory seminar that's offered beforehand before the show. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So this is Jack. Um, in terms of tactile exhibits versus performances, I think this special consideration would just to be make sure that you know what you need to go about offering that kind of that service. If the exhibit itself is meant to be tactile as part of its programming and it's just designed that way by nature, that's going to be a different circumstance than an exhibit that exists that you are then offering a tactile experience for on a scheduled or predetermined basis for people that need that service. So the latter is kind of the same way you would go about offering a service for a performance where you just you contact the appropriate people on your staff and make sure that they're aware that this is happening, that you're getting all your ducks in a row, you're doing the marketing to the community, you're making sure that it's staffed, and you're finding the provider. If you're building or offering something that's intrinsically by design going to be accessible in its nature, sort of like what Beth was talking about with Two Rivers coming production, where it's going to feature sign language as part of the process, that's going to be a longer, larger, more in-depth conversation with your staff around devising that offering because you don't just want to say, okay, well, we'll just throw lights up on stage for your show that has ASL in it because there's going to be a greater need to highlight the ASL as part of the performance, same way you would highlight a dance piece or any kind of work where it's, you're focusing on specific parts of it. So for a tactile exhibit, working with your artist, working with the curator to make sure that the pieces itself are accessible, that they're not going to be easily broken, that there's clear signage and structure around the experience and how people are meant to interact with that exhibit, are all key components of how I would approach that circumstance.
Right.
For the sake of budget and buy-in, for a place that wants to start with baby steps, what are good first steps in offering a more inclusive theater experience?
Well, I'll just add, I back to what Beth was saying earlier. I think just adding, doing, and we always say this, right? That access is a journey. You're not going to do everything all at once. So I think just starting with one cultural event, whether it's a performance, an exhibit, whatever it might be at your organization, and really give yourself enough lead time to prepare it appropriately, get the qualified talent, make sure you have the appropriate resources available, a long runway for your marketing, um, and really do it really well. Because the folks that you'll attract will then hopefully be advocates for you and they'll spread the word and you can build upon it um, for the next year. I can tell you, when I was at Paper Mill many moons ago, we started the service to the blind, low vision community. It started just with the sensory experience before the show started. We did that for a few shows before the audio description service was implemented. And it was wonderful because it really did bring us an audience base. They really appreciated and got their experience was definitely enhanced with the sensory experience. And then a few months later, when we actually implemented the audio description service, it just brought their experience full circle. But again, we started small. We started just with the sensory um, experience. So I think there are, some small steps that one can take. In this case, I think that you can certainly do that. Other services, may not be as easy to do in terms of a small step, but I think it's that picking that one event, as Beth said, and giving yourself that lead time to do it and do it really well and get an audience, right? So I'll just like throw it back out to Beth, Jack, and Lauren. Any other thoughts there that you would like to share?
This is Beth. Yeah, I mean, I think your point about, picking the right piece, if you're a theater piece, look at your season. And we look at that. I mean, when we get theaters sometimes that want to do one show in the season, we look at the season and I try to find something that is going to be, in terms of a deaf audience, is going to be a little bit more visual. If it's two people sitting at a table talking for
Mm.
an hour and a half, that might not be the best show that you want to pick to start with. So I do look at a season and the first thing would be, is there any reference to or comments about deafness or deaf people or the deaf community? That's the first. Is there a deaf person in it? That's the first thing. If not, is there anything that's going to be of special interest? Is it going to be, quote, like, a hot show? Is it going to have a name in it that people are going to recognize? I mean, you kind of look at it. So I'm looking at those kind of shows like any producer would look at a show, and like, you want to be able to attract an audience. Like, what's going to attract an audience? And is there any kind of name recognition that we can use on that end that's really going to attract that community? Because it's, like I said at the beginning, getting the audience is a lot of work. It's hard even for us. It's you don't want to you got to sell tickets. So you want people in the audience. And so that is something that we think about too when we're approached by a theater to do we think it's going to be of interest to the deaf community and something that deaf people are going to want to see. So look at your season and pick something that I think is going to be of interest.
Mhm. Jack and Lauren, anything quickly? We have a few minutes before noon, and so I'm sure there's a couple of more things we're going to try to squeeze in there. But any other thoughts to share there?
I want to ditto what Beth said. I think you you really hit the nail on the head to start small. But one thing that I didn't talk about, but John, you just mentioned in one of your last comments about lead time.
Hmm.
That's really important, especially for an on-site. If we need to schedule somebody on site, like I said, the pool is really small and everybody's busy. So the more advance notice you can give us to put it on the calendar, and the better shot we've got of, getting it covered. I'm sure it's this kind of similar with you, Beth, with, those qualified interpreters. Like I said, we've been working with Two River on all of their performances, all of their big performances. They do one open captioned show for each of those performances. We get that at the beginning of the season. We get the whole year. So I've got all the dates on my calendar already. That's really helpful. So lead time is really big. I know that's not what we were just talking about, but I just wanted to stress that.
No, I'm so glad
But
you did
John,
because I
also to
think,
follow, but John, also
yeah.
to follow up too, like, look what other people are doing, especially like with interpreting and captioning. You might have the same audience. Try not to schedule something on a day that,
Mhm.
because we've been told by people in the deaf community, don't schedule an interpretive performance when the same night it's a caption performance. So even though it's a different person doing that service, I try to check with the theaters and get their schedule about that. So because there is a lot of overlap, and you want to, there's only so many shows that any person can go see. Even for us, when we schedule, we look at other shows that are being interpreted around that time and try to give people like lead times and say, okay,
Mm.
well, there's another big show that's going to be interpreted the next night, too close. So we try to spread it out. So look at other services that might conflict.
That's a really good
Yeah.
point.
But I also, as Lauren, as you were saying, I think the lead time for the talent to prepare. So, there's preparation for the interpreters, there's preparation for the captioner, for the audio describers. They all have prep time. Um, so that you need to take that into account as well. So, Kat, we've got a couple minutes of one last
Mhm.
question before we have to go.
Is there equipment we should invest in versus rent versus the contractor providing?
Well, for the audio description, you can certainly, and Kat and I can put you in touch with the vendor that we utilize. But in the meantime, you could rent the equipment for your audio described performance. Um, we can loan that to you. You just, again, need to give us enough lead time because it's available to the entire cultural community. So that is one avenue. We have many organizations that have started doing that, and now they've built themselves an audience that they're beginning to invest in the purchase of their own equipment. But certainly to start out, if you want to just rent the equipment or borrow it, I should say, from us, you're happy to do that. And Lauren, I believe you come with your equipment.
We
So
come
if you
we
want,
come with our captioning equipment, which is just the shorthand writer and a laptop computer. It's we can't really travel with a big monitor TV screen kind of thing. So that's really it's better for the venue to have that. I know Two River has a monitor that they've invested in. We use it for every performance. We just connect to their monitor with the an HDMI cable, and we get the captions up on the screen. And for all of your gala events, the events that I do with the Alliance, that's the same thing. There's a monitor there that I just connect to, and we put our captions up on that screen.
yep, great. All right. Well, we thank you all so much for joining us. We could be here probably all day, but we're just getting on to the 12 o'clock hour. And really thank you all for coming. And please help me thank Lauren and Jack and Beth. Thank you so much for your time and all of your incredible guidance that you've shared with us today. If there's other questions and thoughts, please share them with Kat and I. If we don't know the answer, we're going to reach out to Lauren, Jack, and Beth to help us out. But this was really, I thought, a great conversation. And thank you all for your great comments and questions that you provided. So before we go, I'm just going to ask Lindsay, any closing thoughts?
Just really to echo the thanks. Thank you so much to the panelists, Beth, Lauren, and Jack, and everyone who participated, and just echoing as well. If you do have any questions, you can also reach out to me, and I will connect with John and the Cultural Access Network. And just thank you for taking the time today to come and to learn.
All right. And I believe Kat has a poll that you're going to drop in. Yes, Kat?
I'm not actually able to launch it because I'm not a co-host anymore.
Oh, I can make you a co-host.
Thank you.
Hold on. Sorry.
That's okay.
And you are now a co-host. So there you go.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right. So she'll drop that in. And again, we thank you. If you could just take a moment to complete that, that's really helpful for us as we prepare for future discussions. And again, really thank you so much for being with us, and we're wishing everyone a great day. We'll see you soon.
Hi, Arlene. Nice to see you.